people who arrived at the landfill after it collapsed. Since then, they have camped here, but bodies of their loved ones remain buried.
Bana omukyala waffe n'abaana basatu.
Abantu be family ye mukyala we ne mutabani we bafiire eri nga tumaze weekend namba tunabalaba.
Now they are all waiting for one thing, the bodies of their loved ones. Even when hopes of finding them alive faded, they hope to at least give them a decent burial.
Tusabireko tubalaba at least tumanye tubaziseeko. Kusinga obaleko ovondireyo mu kasasi.
Nikatuke tulinzeeko kulaba naku lwaleero batunasa obalaba.
The police have, however, announced that of the 34 bodies recovered, 23 have been identified by relatives, including the body of Nasir Abdul, who was reported missing by his parents in 2022.
The father came up yesterday, went to City Mortuary and confirmed that he is the son, even brought a photocopy of the national ID, of his national ID, but we are going to do DNA tests.
The number of missing persons, according to authorities, now stands at 29, following the discovery of 4 more bodies on Thursday afternoon. Kampala Metropolitan Police spokesperson Patrick Onyango says the work remains challenging.
Where we had the place was waterlogged, and our engineers, our technical people, the operators.
All right, we do continue with the sad tales of the Chiteze landfill, where, there's been conversation about a methane explosion that could have caused this slide of the garbage. We can't call it a landslide. It's a garbage slide, for lack of a better word. But there'd been already a lot of conversation, a lot of warnings about the Chiteze landfill and the reason as to why it didn't have to exist even in the first place. And also at its introduction in Chiteze, it was rejected by the locals, but nevertheless, it is the same thing that happened. And as more and more hopes for retrieving more dead bodies continues, there is also the likelihood of not having another place to be able to get this rubbish, because the conversation or the advice that had been earlier on given was for the garbage itself to be relocated in another place, because if not, there could be another, cave-in of the same rubbish heap or part of the rubbish heap that did remain. This, as government actually asks that the families that lost loved ones be given 5 million shillings as an inquest into who slept on the job also comes through. We are still talking about the very sad story of this landfill that so far has, confirmed 34 people dead. Those are the bodies that have been so far retrieved. We don't know how many could be trapped in, because there are quite a number of people who are still unaccounted for. That's what the week has been, with a lot of that, but also in the courts of law, a lot that did come through. But let's start off with a tragic incident at Chiteze. And with me, of course, let me get to introduce to you my panel, and they always say ladies first, unless when there is danger. Dictor Simwe, I was asking my producer where he scooped Dictor from. It's been a while. A very good morning to you, and a pleasure having you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Yeah, it's been a while, but I'm here today. So
you're in 256, so always say, yes. I am around.
Yeah, I'm around.
All right, and Council Gawaya Tegule, of course, definitely, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Very good morning to you.
Morning Mildred, morning Dictor, morning Joshua, and morning everyone there. I left home this morning and my little boy told me, when you get on air, please wave to me. So
please wave.
Ross, hello. Andrine, hello. Yes, I'm on air. I'll see you later.
I love that. I love the kids and what they always demand for their demands. Joshua Chadimpa, it's been a while. Earlier on, I did have Council asking whether you're still in active media, and the answer was an interesting one, but I'll keep it. A very good morning to you. Once a journalist, always one.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the show. I want to thank everybody who is joined on TV, watching us, that I'm happy to be here once again.
Definitely. And Ivan Okuta, who we did expect, unfortunately, may not be able to make it because of unforeseen circumstances. But nevertheless, our conversation here will continue. Council, I want to start off with you on the Chiteze saga. And
why did you start with the government boy?
He's in a totally different. He's in a totally.
He will give you the official position of the government.
His docket is in gender. His docket is in gender. But I still will start off with you because Looking at the history of this place, the landfill, how it started, the plan, the demonstrations that did happen then, all the other expert opinions that have come through saying there is a danger here. It is just a disaster waiting to happen, and God forbid, it did definitely happen over the weekend. What did this bring to you, especially with all the stories, with all the expert opinions that have been provided about such a landfill?
Mildred, it's like watching a horror movie. I've seen the pictures coming through, the videos coming through. It feels like you get the feel of watching a horror movie. Now, I'm not very good with horror movies. I avoid them whenever I can. So I've tried to keep away from watching pictures of Kitezi because it's very depressing. Just like, you know, you're watching a horror movie, only that you are in the movie. You're watching the horror movie from inside it. You're part of the thing, and you're getting everything live. It's horrible, it's horrifying, it's shocking. It is shock upon horror upon shock upon horror that we're watching in Kitezi. And for me, this goes back to what we've been telling Ugandans. When you sow seeds of foolishness, you reap the fruit of foolishness. Ukipanda mbegu za ujinga, utavuna matunda ya ujinga. You cannot, we've been, you know, every time disaster is happening in a country, our minds must immediately go to the leadership. Who is leading this country?
Yeah.
Who is calling the shots? Who is running the show? We cannot divorce the presidency from this disaster. We cannot divorce the ruling party from this disaster. And this is what we've been telling people. We need to change leadership because the guys who are running the country have no good intent. Public interest is the last thing on Mr. Museveni's mind. Public interest is the last item on the NRM agenda. All they are here for is stay in power, first and foremost, and then do what you want with the power and the resources of the country. That is all. The country is on beyond that. Now, this thing, nobody should say, we did not see this coming. You don't need a prophet to tell you that there's a disaster that's going to happen here. Let me tell you, my problem actually right now is not Kitezi, Mildred. My problem, Kitezi is the last thing on my mind. My problem is that this is a warning shot that we have been teetering on the cliff edge of disaster for a long time. Kitezi is a warning shot, a confirmation shot that there's a problem. Wait for what is coming. That's what I can tell you. Wait for what is coming. We've been telling you for a long time that we have the wrong guys running the country. These guys don't care about Ugandans. They don't give a hoot about you and I. All they care about is, do we have the power? Do we control the resources? That is all they want to know. Are our children comfortable? Your children, my children, are none of their business. And that is all they want. Now, Kitezi
what would
tells
you call the government's intervention of, giving back 5 million for maybe burial expenses? And now the president saying he wants an inquest because he wants to understand who slept on the job. Because whereas, yes, the buck stops
who wants
with
an inquest?
The president.
Let me tell you, let the record reflect, the president slept on the job. If there's anyone to do an inquest, we have done the inquest. The president slept on the job. Let there be no further inquest. He has been sleeping on the job for 38 years. You see, let me tell you, Mildred, this is, for me, I try, like I said, I've steered clear of the Kitezi issue because I get very emotional about these things. Why should people die? Just like that. What was impossible to forecast here? Because all the reports that were coming through for more than 10 years were saying there's a problem in Kitezi. But you see, all that government cares about is NUP is mobilizing, they're going to shut up NUP offices. FDC is doing something, they're going to round up Mugisha Muntu and Nandela Mafabi as it then was. They're going to round up Kiza Besigye, they're going to round up everybody because you're threatening their power. But when there's a threat to the public interest, public security, they don't give a hoot. And that Kitezi should confirm to you that there is something wrong with this country. And for me, the problem with this is that there is more coming. And people should not say, we didn't know. There is more coming.
You're a
There is
prophet of
something
doom.
better than Kitezi. No, you don't need Prophet Jeremiah in a case like this to tell you there is a problem with the country. I mean, we've been saying this a long time. Kitezi is a warning shot. Ugandans, listen to my voice. There is something bigger than Kitezi that's coming. And don't say you did not know.
Okay, thank you very much, Council. I'll definitely be getting back to you. Dictor, it's the same conversation of who slept on the job, because there have been quite a number of reports, technical reports coming in, expert advice on a looming disaster. So it was just a disaster in the waiting until it did happen over the weekend.
Thank you very much for having me. And there is nothing that says failed state like a heap of garbage killing people. Like, there is nothing that says, that clearly says we have failed like that. And as for who slept on the job, I mean, almost all of us really, because I don't think we've paid, even in the media, I don't think we've paid enough attention to the issue of rubbish, the issue of constantly paying attention to the rubbish in Kitezi. We rarely, unless there is some politician going there, we rarely cover it. And definitely, like someone else said, the president, because unlike other local governments, Kampala is not really a local government because the law has changed to put it under the president's office. Kampala is, the people of Kampala can't even make their leaders account, because the leaders of Kampala do not have power. The people who have power are in State House, and those are the ones that are delegated to do the job, and this time they slept on the job. And I mean, the technical people slept on the job, but that too is not surprising, because at the moment, what we have in many government agencies is people, the only money they get is for them to be comfortable, to pay their salaries, to get allowances, and so on and so forth. They never care whether the people's needs are taken care of. And with Kitezi, that's really what happened, because we have two ministers, we have different RCCs, we have an executive director, we have a deputy, and right now, most of those people are saying the people are in the wrong. And you ask yourself, the people are in the wrong, who gives permits to build around Kitezi? Yes, it's not within Kampala, but if they had a buffer zone that they paid for, why aren't they protecting that buffer zone? What we have, because unlike many government agencies, KCC has an enforcement arm, but the only thing they do is run after hawkers in downtown because they can steal money from them, and they never do anything else. They never pay attention to garbage, they never pay attention to anyone building in the road reserve, they never pay attention to people throwing sewage in our swamps. They never do anything other than try and steal from the poorest of us all who live in Kampala. So really, the blame goes around, but mostly it goes to the president, because if he feels like he can no longer manage Kampala because he snatched it from the people, take it back, give it back to the leaders, then at least we can, because in Uganda, while we have failed to change our president, we can at least change leaders at local level. If we were to blame Lukwago, for example, then we can hold Lukwago accountable. But now we know Lukwago doesn't have power, and we know the president has said it more than once, that we took that power away from them. So give it back to the people. At least we can hold those ones accountable. And we cannot at the moment, and that's because the
buck stops with the presidents once again.
Yeah.
All right, Chalimpa, I mean, it's the same kind of story, like Council said. I'm reading news over the week, and there is an update, and immediately, right in the background, another dead body being retrieved. But you're seeing another person as well, waiting patiently to see whether the dead body of their relative will actually be retrieved. What does this say about the country and the management of such?
Thank you, Mildred. Beyond who slept on the job, I think this opens us to a national conversation about how we manage garbage. I want to say I'm sorry for those who lost their dear ones. These citizens should have been alive to contribute to the national development of this country. Of course, the Ministry of Gender, where I come from, we are responsible for the vulnerable citizens of this country. Mm-hmm. And I want to believe that the majority of those who died, of course, those who build around places like that, are the vulnerable and the most poor citizens of this country. We are sorry for them and for the loss. Now, the issue of garbage is bigger than we look about it. It's a conversation that has been on for a very long time, and I've been around for quite some time. I know that during the time of Sebagala, he even called a press conference at the Sheraton, and he said that he had identified the investors. I think the investors were coming from the US, that the idea was to turn this into electricity and also make manure and things like that. But I know that, for example, KCCA, some people have blamed KCCA, and the KCCA only acts according to the budget that is provided for within the national budget for it to be able to have an intervention like this. And once that budget is not provided, it becomes really a big problem. So now, as a country, we should be looking at what is the solution. Ugandans have died. And irrespective of whether somebody slept on the job, we have to come up with a solution. I know that, for example, around 2017, a similar disaster happened in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, at the Goshi landfill, 115 people died. And of course, that opened the eyes of the Ethiopians to come up with a solution. They built one of the most modern equipment, set up a factory where they are making fertilizers, they are making electricity, but they were awakened because there was a disaster similar to this. Of course, we don't have to wait for a disaster to come up with a solution. The issue is if this national conversation has been on, without necessarily leaving it in the hands of the private players, such as Sebagala was proposing, that we invite Americans to invest in this. I think UDC and the government of this country should be taking interest in what investment we can put. Brother Gawaya was talking about more problems to come. Of course, there are fears. Let's look, for example, how we manage our sewage. We have National Water and Sewerage Corporation. The arm of the National Water for Sewerage Corporation, which is growing so fast, is the water arm. The sewerage arm means that whoever is building a house, they have to dig a pit called the septic and a soak pit. While in the actual sense, in a city like this, you would be just tapping into a system. You don't have to build your standalone septic. I know that there are studies which have been conducted to show that most of the water sources around Kampala area are contaminated. Because of the management of this. Of course, we have had cases of cholera in Kampala where people have died. And
it's currently a global health alert.
I wouldn't be surprised if a bigger calamity happens around the issue of cholera. But it is an issue of prioritization for government, because we know that we have a smaller budget, even compared to the region in Kenya, we have quite a smaller budget. How do we deal with our budget to solve issues like this, such that we prioritize issues of garbage, we prioritize issues of how we manage our sewage, to prioritize on how we deal with issues of roads. And again, that's where the leadership in KCCA should be sending their priorities to government, such that... But
KCCA, as of January this very year, KCCA had a request of 190 billion shillings for management of the Kitezi landfill, because they said clearly that it had reached its capacity and much more needed to be done. The money wasn't released. So would you say KCCA is not planning? They're not giving in their requests?
Of course, from my reading on this subject, I know that the solution that KCCA was coming up with was to buy another place in Dundu, which is similar to Kitezi.
134 acres.
Yeah, something like that. Now, that wouldn't do away with the problem. I was giving you the example of Ethiopia. The landfill which caused the calamity in Ethiopia had been abandoned. But, you know, the methane within the ground was building, and it caused a calamity. So even if you shift from Kitezi and go to Dundu without having a solution for Kitezi, still you will be sitting on a time bomb. So it is an issue of prioritization, and I know, of course, a country, this is a huge investment, which requires also involvement of other partners, like World Bank and others, or making a choice that we stop doing any other project within Kampala and concentrate our budget on the management of garbage.
Okay. Thank you. You actually looked into my conversation next. And Councillor Gawaya, this brings in the context of, in any production system, there will always be waste. That cannot be, put aside. But in this day and age, the statement that is always said, waste is not waste until it is wasted. It was about 2021 or thereabout when KCCA purchased the 134 acres of land in Dundu for waste management. We thought the conversation would change. We are producing about 2,500 tons of waste literally each day in only the Kampala metropolitan area. How do we get to manage? Because currently, we wanted to, I'm saying we because, we're all encompassed after all at the end of the day. KCCA wanted to take part of this garbage to Entebbe, and the people have rejected it outrightly. They said, we do not want. The same way it was being rejected in Dundu. Then one would ask, what next? How are we going to be able to deal with the same kind of thing that we're actually generating on a daily?
Mildred, it goes back to the whole concept of governance. It goes back to whether Ugandans are willing to wake up and smell the coffee and say, you know what, we have had 38 years of foolishness, let's now wisen up and do things the way they're supposed to be done. There is a way a country is supposed to be managed. There is a way a country should be run. There's a way public systems should be run. If we refuse to stick to known methods that work, if we refuse to neglect the things that ought to be done, there is more than Kitezi that is coming up. And I've said this before. There are bigger things than Kitezi that are going to blow up here. And then Ugandans will look back and say, we wish we had known.
But then what do we do before then?
You see, let me build this, because we must, first of all, accept that there's a problem. Until you accept that there's a governance problem, you'll never uproot the problems that are affecting us. You want to be forensic about, in your approach to social problems. We need to be forensic about Kitezi. Let us unearth everything about Kitezi, excuse the pun. There is a problem beyond the garbage. The underlying currents, the underlying political currents, the underlying social currents that fuel and foment disasters like Kitezi must be examined and re-examined and cross-examined. In April 1986, the USSR, the Soviet Union as it then was, had what they call, what we remember as the Chernobyl disaster, a nuclear explosion. That, a nuclear reactor, just blew up. And then the problem was that it was not even the explosion itself, but the after effects were amazing. It affected generations after that. Now, the build-up to Chernobyl should have been foreseen and people say, look, there's going to be a problem here. Let us forestall it. Let us nip it in the bud. Now, Uganda doesn't work like that. Ugandans are, for some reason, obsessed with everybody. Every time you talk about a problem in society, then the guys in power want to leverage it and say, how do we make money off this? There is an investor from South Africa who came about 3 years ago. He's called Paul, and he's a Ugandan, but he's based in South Africa. He wanted to process biopower, from the garbage, like get the garbage, process it, make it turn into electricity, contribute to the national grid. Let me tell you, Mildred, we went up and down. I was his lawyer. We went up and down, this office, that office. Everybody was tossing us around until Paul said, no, you know what, guys? I'm done with this. He folded his hands, went back to South Africa. This is how government works in this country. When there is nothing in it for them, they will never license you to do anything. That's the problem. Everybody thinks about himself, and that is what Mr. Museveni has taught Ugandans. Think about yourself and your children and nobody else, because that is what he does, and that is what Ugandans have learned now. Because our fathers told us, when the head of the household has a hunchback, all the members of the family will walk with a stoop, because that is how Muzei walks. That is how everybody else is going to walk. When the head of the household is corrupt, everybody in the household, in the family, is going to be corrupt. When the head of the household thinks only about himself, everybody in the family is going to think about themselves. And now that is where Uganda is. Paul went back to South Africa and said, you know what, I'm done with Uganda. Now, people like this could have saved us. The disaster we're having today could have been turned into an opportunity much earlier to generate power, to create revenue, to create jobs, to create income for families, to improve our economy. But because the people that control this country cannot let you do anything unless you give them something, we're having things like Kitezi. So we need to get back to basics as a country and say, this is not how governments should be run. Let us now go back to ground zero and say, can we begin rebuilding so that we avoid disasters like this? So the issue of Kitezi is not the thing itself. Kitezi is only a symptom of a much, much bigger problem. And the level of thinking that created problems like Kitezi must be interrogated, because Kitezi and other disasters that are coming need to be the coming disasters must be forestalled now. And I can guarantee Ugandans that the level of thinking that created the disaster of Kitezi cannot help us resolve the problems that are coming. We need to raise our level of thinking and begin to replan and go back to the basics. Let those who are in power, for once, begin acting in the public interest, because you've refused to follow the original plan for Kampala. People are building anyhow. We're doing things anyhow. So you see, the environment is being mismanaged, and we think it's okay. Kitezi is a sign that when you mismanage the environment, you pay the price for it. And some prices are really hard to pay. As we're saying, we're collecting dead bodies from garbage. What a shame. What a scandal. And the president is still going to say, we're now going to compensate 5 million. Keep your 5 million, Mr. President. Keep your 5 million. People don't need banner this time. People need real solutions to the actual problems they're facing. That's 5 million is actually a bribe. You're trying to blind Ugandans to the fact that you're failing as a president.
Could be a lot to those people who are actually grieving right now.
It won't bring back their dead ones.
Of course it won't.
And it will not prevent the deaths that are going to result from more disasters that are coming. And that is why I'm saying we don't need your 5 million, Mr. President. It's not even his 5 million, it's from the Treasury. But that is what he always does every time there's a problem. He says, government, I've done the Treasury, we'll give everybody 5 million. Who needs that kind of money? What we need is good governance. What we need is a president who cares and who is responsive to the problems that affect the people.
All right, Tarimpa needs to respond. Yes.
Brother Teguya,
it is okay. You interject. It is okay to be wrong.
The issue is, you talk about failure in governance. Where are we going to get the governance experts? Because we've seen in the past that even other people who have managed the city, there's been a failure. We talk about, you're reading from the book of Lamentation, you're lamenting about these situations. But I think we need to move from this level to look at where do we go. Now for you are
but
actually, I'm not in Lamentation. I began from Genesis, not Lamentation. I began from Genesis. That is why.
And you're in the book of Revelation.
No.
I think you've started revealing.
I did Revelation, but I began from Genesis because I said this is where everything begins.
Yes.
And that's why I'm saying beyond the Lamentation, we need to be forensic about examining this disaster.
But also, Joshua, that is why I want to say that we've actually hired experts to do studies, and they've said, in the first place, you shouldn't have had this. Okay, if it is there is a likely methane explosion. Those are reports that are gathering dust on the shelves of wherever they exist.
And the issue is that in terms of policy, once you come up with a report like that, to move it forward, it must be backed up by funding. So once we have a report, we have to look into the coffers. Do we have the funding to implement the solution.
The money is there. It has always been there.
That's where the problem
only
has
that
been.
your government is stealing it, is mismanaging it, it's abusing it.
Council, let's give
there.
Joshua just a few minutes to
Yeah,
go ahead. So there's no money?
The issue is that
How about the investors who have come and they've been failed?
No, not to my knowledge. I refer to an investor who came, and that investor was brought by one other than the late Alhaj Nasser Tegi Sebagala, and it was supposed to be a public-private partnership between them and government. In that case, KCC has existed then. Now, the one he's talking about is only privy to that information because he said he was a lawyer to that private person who wanted to do business. So in terms of government, I've not heard of it. However, it would have been a very good opportunity.
But still, private sector leading
it would have been a very good opportunity. About the circumstances under which the person left, I don't know. As a lawyer, he knows. Probably he should have informed the relevant authorities to intervene because those bodies exist in this country. If that information, you are privy to that information of some people demanding for some kind of bribe for this investor to come up, then that information should have been volunteered to the relevant organizations.
All right, maybe Joshua and the entire team. Let's take a very short commercial break and return because yes, we want to also get to the Book of Acts. What the next, especially now that the solution, the temporary solution seems to be relocate the garbage, and wherever KCCA is trying to get the space, they're saying, look at this, we are sorry about what is happening with the people in Kitezi, but please do not bring it here. We're just not ready for it. Let's get back. All right, welcome back and thank you for keeping it NBS Television. This is the Morning Breeze, your most authoritative morning current affairs show. And on Friday, we get to have a conversation around the biggest stories of the week. And of course, the conversation, the sad tale of Chitezi. As of yesterday, the death toll had risen up to 34. Now, I was perusing through a memorandum that was as of 2nd of July this very year, and from the Director of Public Health and Environment. Some of the region, the emergencies that had been cited in July, that was last month, as it started, was cracks and waste movement. Now, they did say on the 28th of June, they had realized cracks and waste slides that were observed in the northeastern part of the landfill. Secondly, there was a blocked drainage channel. Consequently, the waste movement had blocked the main drainage channel, causing leachate flooding in the neighborhood side. Now, leachate flooding also, this is hazardous water because it's definitely the rains coming through, going through the waste, collecting whatever filth, and then it is flowing back. That is also a health emergency that we would be looking at. But also a depleted operational area because the Director of Public Health and Environment said the area of operation had reduced due to the issues that had actually been mentioned clearly up until August, unfortunately, when we had this. Dictor, coming to you. We can lament, we can rant, we can say whatever we have to say, but unfortunately, we have lost lives. They cannot be replaced. The next phase would be thinking about, then what next? How do we get to better manage? First point of conversation was shift some of that rubbish, because even the remaining part will likely be able to cave in. We say, okay, let's go to maybe Nkumba areas in Entebbe. Entebbe municipality says you're not welcome. But earlier in the early 2021 or wherever we got land in Dundu for a recycling plant, that is also not yet coming through. But Kampala continues to produce thousands of tons of waste each and every day from the markets, from the homesteads, from any other area. How then do we move forward?
Okay, so first of all, some heads need to roll. It's as simple as that. We've seen the leaders of Kampala all coming and saying, you know, it's not our fault, we didn't have money, the people built in the buffer zone, people would not have died otherwise, and so on and so forth. So let me suggest that instead of an inquest, because we know inquests in Uganda never amount to much, let the government, the president's office, which is the head of Kampala, sit, decide who did what, who should have done what. Get some heads to roll. At least
get some people fired?
Yeah, fire some people so that next time, like, people are careful, because one of the problems we have is impunity, that people know they will get away with it. That's why right now The leaders of Kampala are going around, the technocrats are going around and saying it's not our fault, it's the people's fault. Why did they build in the buffer zone? So let's have some heads rolling. After that, there are so many investors that have been willing to, and even if there are no investors, I mean, for example, 93%, at least 90% of that garbage is organic, which means it can rot, it can become fertilizer. You can, in other words, you can take it out and do something with it. Let's invest money. Let's even assume for argument's sake, there is no investor that we can get, which is not true. But let's assume for argument's sake that that's what's going to happen. I mean, we have invested in a factory in Tororo, which has never produced a single bag of fertilizer. Let's use Kampala garbage or urban area garbage to have some fertilizer. That's one. Two, most of us pay for our garbage, at least in, I don't know what to call them, middle class areas, because that's questionable. There is no real middle class area in Kampala, but most of us pay for our garbage. So let's have the money we are paying be used for something. I know that the garbage collectors are taking some of it to do the service, but also the money that they pay to KCCA, put it towards dealing with this garbage, because what does that money do? Does anyone know when I pay, let's say, 20,000 every month, what does an extra of that 20,000 do? That the one that goes, because they pay to KCCA some of that amount, what does it do? Let's have some of that money going to actually managing this garbage and turning it into something useful, whether it's electricity, whether it is fertilizer. Let's do something with it so that we have proper management of, because we cannot wish away this garbage. And this thing they have been saying, it's that people should know better. There is no place on earth where people won't act in their personal interests. That's why we pay taxes. That's why we have government, to solve problems that we cannot solve individually. So let's have the government invest in reducing that garbage, first of all, recycling what they can, turning what they can into fertilizer, and then also maybe making electricity. And we were talking in the break about not knowing about investors. But each one of us, I first encountered someone trying to turn garbage into electricity in 2011. Almost everyone has encountered someone trying to turn garbage, Kampala garbage, into electricity. Why is it that never amounts to much? You cannot say that all of them are looking just make quick money and walk away without doing the work. Surely, if that many people are interested, there has to be something that can be done. So let's, first of all, have people, some heads rolling. Seriously, we cannot have a tragedy like this. Foreseen, warned about everything, and all we are going to say, and they are not even apologizing. They are like, it's their fault. Why did they build in the buffer zone? But first of all, who gives the permits? Secondly,
where the M&E, like raising a structure?
How does someone raise a structure in a place where you should be going every day, and you don't know about it, and you don't stop it? Thirdly, these people, actually, provision of housing, mostly to the poor, is the government's job. Everywhere else, that's what happens. Why are people forced to build around places that should be unlivable? That just says, like, so many people are sleeping on their job, and we need to have some heads roll. Really, we do need that as a start, because then at least maybe the next time someone is trying to collect money from someone interested in dealing with this garbage, they'll be like, but last time it cost this one a job and I don't want to lose my job. But
okay.
If we, yeah.
All right, thank you, Dictor. I think very great ideas, only if they can be picked up. That is why I come back to you, Councillor Tegule. What are the practical aspects? I know you've talked about leadership change, but still, if you get leaders that will not be accountable, do not know what exactly to do, we may be getting in the same cycle of issues. What practicabilities can be encompassed right now, well knowing that every day, definitely, there will be garbage. For as long as there is any sort of production, whether it's cooking in a homestead, whether it's an industry producing goods, there will be garbage, there will be waste. How do we manage it moving forward?
Okay. I want to be emphatic in this. First of all, we need a new family in State House. Number one.
Okay.
And until Ugandans wake up that reality, we shall keep on going around the same problem. Get us a new family in State House. A new family with a new thinking, with a new approach to how a country should be run, with new methods of work, with a fresh attitude, with a feeling that Uganda does not belong to us, it is for Ugandans, and that it must work for everybody. Until Ugandans do that, we shall keep on having the same disasters, horror upon horror, shock upon shock, and stuff like that. Number two, we need to have what they call corrective planning. Because for a long time now, Uganda has been swinging between mismanagement and non-management. Now, garbage, I've seen an approach to garbage collection and management by various countries. And I like the Americans for one thing. Americans will document everything. You'll see their management, if garbage may seem like garbage, but it is actually managed. They will tell you when the garbage was collected, from which place, at what time, by who, and they will tell you that when it came to Chitezi, our Chitezi, it was brought at this time, it was put here. Americans will trace garbage from your house to Chitezi and get it. If you say, I lost my ID, it was taken by the garbage collectors the last month, they'll go back to the records and say, which day was it? On this day, it was Gundi who picked the garbage at this time, and this way, and you go to Chitezi and say, this is where we put the garbage on that day, which tells you that even garbage can actually be managed and properly managed. And that is where we need to go to, that we need to now manage garbage intentionally and correctly. And then Kampala generally needs corrective planning. Actually, the country needs corrective planning. For a long time now, we have just been doing things haphazardly, and that must come to an end. Let Chitezi be a learning point that when people mismanage a country, then there's always a price to pay. And half the time, it's the common man who pays the price. Sio wale waju. It's the guys on the ground who are going to pay the price. And that is what I would like us as Ugandans to embrace and say, you know what, let us correct the planning. First of all, a plan, a town must not just develop anyhow. Kampala had a master plan. Yeah. The British gave us a master plan for Kampala. There's a blueprint for Kampala, which we abandoned when these guys came to power. These are NRM. When they came to power, we forgot about organized development completely. This is the part of the price we are paying. Let us go back to basics and say it is possible to plan a town. Let us plan a town. Whatever new towns are coming up, they must be planned. For Kampala, we need corrective planning. We shall need a leader to come in and say, you know what? I'm going to invest maybe 10 years of corrective planning for Kampala. There are villages, there are areas which must be raised down completely, like raise them down completely, relocate the people, replant these areas, put roads, put sewage, sewerage lines, and then put proper systems in place, and then people can now begin to come back, build in a certain way, and they should be monitored, they should be assisted. We really need to do things in a civilized manner. But Chitezi is a reminder that we have gone wrong. We are far off track, we veered off track, and we need urgently to come back to our senses and say, guys, this is not how things are run. Yeah. Every time I go to the country, I get depressed because, you know, you go to cities which are really organized, and you're like, why can't we do this? And the amazing thing, Mildred, is that these guys spend their holidays in Britain, in the US, in whatever. They
do benchmarking in some of those
countries.
They
don't do no benchmarking. I think for some reason they benchmark on how to stay in power longer, on how to grip the nation better, and that's all they do. When it comes to how things should be done, they don't learn nothing from their trip. So we need to get back to the basics. Okay. And I also want Ugandans to grow up. Chitezi should be an opportunity for us to grow up. Let us challenge ourselves and say, we can be better than this as a country. can we do things the right way? If you know this, if you want to build, go and get a building permit. You who is issuing the building permits, go to the ground and say, guy, you want to build, but this is a road reserve. You can't build here. Or you have a plan, but we don't think you have the money to finish this, complete this plan. Can you get another plan which you can complete in a nicer way, in a shorter time, so that you can be able to live a good life? Ugandans must grow up. If we don't grow up now, we shall not be around tomorrow.
All right. Joshua, what next then? Because like you said, yes, we cannot lament entirely over what has happened, albeit the fact that it is sad. How then do we get back to the drawing board? Because the most quickest one would have been relocate part of that rubbish. But everywhere, everyone is saying, please, you're not welcome. What next for government then?
Of course, I'm sure that all of us would want our cities to be like London, to be like others, to be organized. But we also have to cut the cloth according to the size of the cloth we have. Now, the challenge we have, for example, in Uganda is that development has overtaken planning. And this has a lot to say about, one, issues like the land ownership. So, for example, the real estate industry, which is in private hands, they are coming up with estates because what it takes is just buying land from a private person and then cut plots into it.
But there is a Ministry of Lands, there is National Environment Management Authority, if in case you're building in a wetland, that will issue an environmental impact assessment report. There are all this, there is government. They're not working in a vacuum.
It's not an issue of building in a wetland or not, because there is no evidence that the houses that were affected in Kitezi, for example, were built in a wetland.
No, I'm trying to look at the planning.
It is an issue of, the issue is that once people have, there is ownership of land, and people have their titles, and now, in some of the areas, now, for example, there's a weakness in the planning, in the planning departments. For example, in that area which is Wakiso. In some areas, even the planning function has been privatized. You will see that once you are building,
you cannot privatize planning.
Look, I'm saying the management of it. I'm giving you an example that there are some areas where I know that there are private companies. For example, if you are building a house, some people will come that they are from planning. They will ask for the plan, and in some cases, once you pay, and this is official, I'm talking about, for example, Wakiso, because I've seen it, then the plan is approved. So the construction goes on. Of course, this is wrong. It shouldn't be, and we have to begin from there. Now, there are also issues of, for example, politics overtaking the planning. For example, there are cases where the technical people will make a recommendation, but probably it's not politically right. Recently, for example, there was the issue of evicting people from the wetlands. We saw the chorus of voices that were coming from politicians to stop
how did they
exercise from going.
How did they get in the wetland in the first place? That's why I'm saying, where is the monitoring?
What my colleagues are talking about
is,
for example, go down there in Kitezi, go to other places similar to Kitezi, the wetlands, and demolish the structures and plan afresh. Put the sewer pipes, put the water pipes,
because originally,
and then develop in unorganized demand. Can it work?
Josh, originally,
will it be accepted by the politicians?
The biggest conversation,
will it be politically right?
And I love you talked about two things, development and planning. There is a plan before even the development comes. In the first place, who is giving land titles in wetlands that are supposed to be protected areas?
I think there is a consensus, general consensus here, that we need to start afresh from a clean sheet. And that's where we stand now. So if now we recognize that there has been a problem, we want to start afresh and, on a clean sheet, avoid disasters like Kitezi, it means that we have to look at issues of where people are building. It means that to build, you have, there must be planning. Now, for example, in a district, normally planning function stops at the town councils and the municipalities. It means now that once you say that for you to build a house in your village, somewhere in Wakiso, you need to get a plan approved. There will be a political issue around it. Now, are the politicians willing to work with the rest of us to say that now this should work? That's where the problem is coming from.
You know, Mildred,
It doesn't have to be, and it doesn't have to be either the politicians or any other
Where do the politicians come from?
No,
Well,
the
see,
way
the
this guy is
society.
talking,
Well,
the way
see-
this guy is talking,
Yes.
you know what Shakespeare said? Said, let's begin by killing all the lawyers. For me, I think from what he's talking, from what he's saying, I think we should be saying, let's begin by killing all the politicians. I'm using that rhetorically.
No, that's what you're
Because, you
Rhetorically.
see, if
Rhetorically.
politicians are standing in the way of development, then we don't need them. And for me, I think that a good politician, Milton Obote did
And
make
I'm not
a
talking
very
about
good speech. Just a minute. Milton Obote did make a very good speech to Parliament. I think you must have seen it by now. It has been going around a bit. And he says, a good politician, the way he used to talk, a good politician is the one who puts the public interest before private interest. We need to go back to an era where people come to power and the first thing on their heart is
It's public
the
good.
public interest. We want to do the best for the people. Because if Joshua says, will the politicians allow, I'm saying, damn the politicians.
Because
Let's
I've
kill
seen
all of
them
them
in the
and then
wetlands.
get
Maybe
back
I'll
to-
give Dixon a
I've
few minutes
seen them
before I
in
get
the
back to
wetlands.
you,
When it
Joshua.
came to breaking down houses in the wetlands, there was this chorus of
Voting
voices.
the politicians for nothing. First of all, is there a part of Wakiso that is not a gazetted urban area? Like, okay, is Chitezi not a gazetted urban area? In Kampala, we should not even talk about politicians because powers of the politicians were taken away and handed to technocrats. But in Wakiso, most of Wakiso, where I come from in Bushenyi, there are parts of Ishaka Bushenyi municipality that are complete villages. But if you are in a municipality, you have to provide a plan to build. How is it that in Wakiso, where the whole of Wakiso almost is, or in Mukono, is an urban center, you're claiming that it's the politicians? No, it's not. Like, you can scapegoat them in other places. As for the wetlands, they should never have built in the wetlands. And
No,
it's as simple as, and
what
it's not
I was
the,
saying
again, it's
actually
not
was
the
that we should
politicians.
speak the same language, because I was giving an example that recently when there was the issue
You
of
first
people-
agree that you serve a very bad government,
No, the
Joshua.
issue is that when the government
It's
was
bad,
breaking down
it's corrupt, it's
houses
incompetent.
in the wetland, there was this chorus of voices from politicians
But they were right.
walking there, camping there to stop an exercise.
No, but
which
they
should
were
have
right.
improved the situation.
No,
The
they
same
were right.
would happen-
An exercise
the
that was
same
also
would
not
happen-
well
It was
planned.
not
It
supposed
was
to
What
reactionary.
happened to Kitezi now?
No, it was not supposed to happen. Because you see, you're saying, let's break these houses, but people paid money, built in these places, you were all
You were
looking
sleeping.
on. And then, and also you target the poorest of them all. Because where I live in Chisasi, there is a rich man, he has built a very big wall around a former swamp. And no one is saying anything. And likely no one will break it down. You will go and find the poorest who cannot take you to court, and those are the ones you're going to break down.
Okay.
So it's a very bad. First of all, don't allow these people, because Kampala is very small. What are you doing in City Hall that you can't see what's happening around?
All right, I think the consensus, like Joshua did clearly say, is we need to start afresh. There is a huge change that needs to be coming through, and it is actually from both you and me and government and everyone else who is concerned. We're not only going to say, let government do that. Everyone else has to definitely be a part of this, because like Council did say, you will be affected by the mismanagement or non-management of whatever situation it is. But you can send in your conversation as well on social media at NBS TV, on X, NBS Television on Facebook, and Next Media Services. Let's take a very short commercial break. When we do return, back to the conversation about was it right, was it not right, the Service Award in Parliament.
Or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100 *21# and select daily, or use the MyMTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
Discover Prince Badru Kakunguru Heights, looking for premium office and residential space, offering over 2,500 square meters of office space across 5 floors, 35 fully furnished apartments. commercial and retail spaces, a functional hall and ample parking. Enjoy a 360 view of Kampala city from Chibuli Hill, just 2 kilometers from the city center. Visit us today or call 0759 759 999. Connect with us at remax.ug or www.remax.ug.
Hi, hello everyone. First of all, I'm very honored to have been invited to attend the Pan-African Global Awards. It will be a great honor for me to attend on the 31st of August. As you know, Africa has the largest potential, and I'm a small player in it, and I continue to play my role for as long as I'm here. So really, if I was you and I'm thinking of an opportunity, the place to be is in Africa with 1.5 billion people. How can you go wrong?
Powered by Fairway Hotel, NBS TV, Grow Foundation, The Spy Uganda, Detective UG.
Your 6 lucky numbers could be the winning combination for the Powerball Draw Show tonight. Proudly brought to you by Ituba, the proud operator of the Uganda National Lottery. Tune in at 8:57 p.m. on NBS to see if you're a winner. Play responsibly. The Uganda National Lottery is operated by Ituba Uganda and regulated by the National Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board.
Uganda National Lottery. Dream, play, win.
Are you planning an event? Think of X Events. For the best photography and videography of all kinds, we believe that every moment is worth capturing. Whether Kwanjula, weddings, Kuhinjira, bringing out the culture and glamour. And of course, a professional team that has mastered the art of the game and pro-gear with elegance. X Events is located along Rubaga Road on Access Building opposite Hotel Sojavalo. X Events, capturing your precious moments.
A very good morning to you once again, and thank you so much for keeping it NBS Television. And this is the Morning Breeze. This is the Media Roundtable. Comes to you every Friday, where we have a panel of journalists making sense of the stories that have made headlines. Now, after a huge conversation regarding the ex gratia or the service award that was given to the commissioners, the different commissioners of parliament, of course, including the immediate former leader of opposition, who was given 500 million, and the rest did take about 400 million shillings. Of course, there was a court case, and Justice Douglas Singiza did rule that the decision, quoting verbatim, the decision dated 6 May 2022, to award the leader of opposition in parliament, Honorable Matthias Mpuga, with 500 million shillings and 3 other commissioners 400 million each as a service award was approved by Parliament and formed part of the budget presented to the executive as required by the Public Finance Management Act. So it was definitely legal. But he went ahead to do what you would call a tie-back on the how improper it was, and that is why he did drag in the clerk to Parliament, who should have been an accounting officer, to scrutinize and also be able to give advice to the Parliament of Uganda, or the leadership of the Parliament. I will start with Councillor Gawaya. What does this say? Because the conversation right now in the public sphere is who has the egg on the face. In the first place, it was, oh, you shouldn't have taken the money, it was illegal, but now they're coming up to say it is legal. It is legal, but improper.
Mildred, when I was here a few months ago on this very show, I think I made it clear, and I think this judgment or this ruling vindicates me. I said, when a payment is statutory, when it is provided for by law, you cannot ably begin, you cannot per se begin to fault the person for taking the money. I think I made that clear in this very seat. If it is a statutory payment and it is provided for by the law, and it is going to work for any holder of that office, it has worked for Mpuga, it will work for Senyonyi, it will work for everybody who steps into that office, then it is difficult to question it legally. You cannot challenge it legally. So my argument at that time was that this is perfectly legal and the argument should be different. So I'm glad, I don't usually say this, but I never say I told you so, but on this occasion, I think I want to just say that the Justice Douglas Singiza just vindicated my argument that I made here. Because this is a payment as provided for by law. Mpuga has received his money. When Senyonyi finishes, the same law is going to apply to Senyonyi. He's going to pick 500 million, or at least to be available for him to pick. The next leader of opposition as well will be subject to the same law. You can't begin to fault Mpuga for that. So I said the argument therefore should be different. If Ugandans feel that this is manifestly unfair, the payment is manifestly unfair, and I think it is, by the way. I think it is. Because I think that as a country that is poor, there should be a way we allocate resources. There is we should have a reward system, a rewarded remuneration system, that there is a way people earn money from the public funds, from the public coffers. And I think we should have a system. And I think that is where Justice Singiza, who I think got it right, said that there should be we need to have a law that provides for this, so that there is a way monies are gotten from the treasury to be paid out, and it should reflect some kind of uniformity. The disparity in income between those in power and those out of power is so high, it is ridiculous.
We don't seem to have a particular law with regard to this. It was passed as a different vote. It seemed a one-off.
That is what the judge was saying.
Yes.
That's what the judge was saying, that we need to have something broader.
And that is why he's faulting the clerk now.
We need to have something broader. Now, we've made arguments for this before. We've talked about minimum wage as a starting point, that if anybody is getting employed, then there must be a minimum he should expect, and there should be a predictable way of ascertaining his future income. We don't have that in Uganda because your president said he's going to scare off investors. That's why I said for many of the problems we have as a country, the starting point should be get a new family in State House, and then you'll have different solutions coming to the problems we're facing, or at least you'll have solutions coming to the problems we're facing. As long as you have a man whose only interest is to stay in power and make himself and his family comfortable, you can have problems without fail. We need a new thinking in State House, where a leader says, you know what, I'm here to serve, and that is all I want to do. So the issue, therefore, that should be on the Mpuga saga should be, how do we make sure that there is an across-the-board system that serves all Ugandans, and the people who are in power should not be paid too much.
Would it be a nullification then of the proposed impeachment motion that was mooted by Honorable Sechikubo, Sarah Opendi, and the rest of the team?
Now, the problem I have with the Mpuga issue is that we are brewing a storm in a teacup. I think that's the English expression. Brewing a storm in a teacup. We're making a mountain out of a molehill. Uganda, whether Mpuga be right or wrong, I think Parliament has bigger problems to solve. Problems of national interest that have national consequences. But they're jumping on some small issue of Mpuga, ignoring bigger problems that are affecting everybody across the board. I think we want to see Parliament involved in strategic thinking, in strategic planning, in strategic checks and balances that will yield results beyond Mpuga. Mpuga is just a small pawn on the chessboard. Okay. Why is there on Mpuga? There is bigger fish to fry. Parliament should question the way this country is being run, the way power is organized and exercised in this country. That's what I should expect Parliament to be doing. Parliament should question the bigger resources that are coming, that are being pilfered from the state coffers by the presidency generally, by the First Family, by those in the ruling party.
What of Parliament
without
itself?
Question, without challenge.
What of Parliament itself? Because the public has.
You see, now Parliament, the issue is that we have now a bigger problem. that people think, last month we had the celebration at Kololo, and I've never seen such foolishness, such a level of foolishness in this country. 38 years, you're here saying, oh no, want to celebrate Mzee for what he has been doing for the country. This man, Mildred, I'm 53 today, he came in when I was 14. I've watched Uganda being systematically ruined. And then you're gathering at Kololo like a council of fools to celebrate a man who has ruined your own country. I find that level of thinking unacceptable, and I don't want to be part of it.
Just like I find your language unacceptable.
Let me tell you, no.
I will find your language unacceptable.
It is perfectly legitimate because I'm a citizen who is telling people that what we are doing is wrong. You're killing the country by yourselves. You need to be able as a citizenry to say, we're making the wrong decisions. We need to do something that will make our children secure in the future.
All right, thank you.
We've made mistakes and we need to correct them.
We need to rectify them.
Yes, and if all we're doing is celebrating mediocrity, then as a country, we are heading in the right direction. And it's our own fault.
One would say you see mediocrity because you're on the other side, and they on the other side are seeing a totally different. You're on the other side that thinks the president
This is not about politics.
There is a side that thinks, or hail the president, he's done everything. But it's okay. You're entitled to your opinion, Council. Thank you very much. Let me get back to you. Let me get back to you in just a bit. Dictor, I want to come to you.
Are you trying to shut me up?
No, I'm not shutting you up. I am just giving time to another person as well.
Believe
I'll
it.
Get back to you.
I don't believe it.
But there are always two
What
sides
happened to free speech in this country?
I will come back to you. You had your time.
No, the point I was making was...
No worries. I will come back to you. Let me give Dictor some time. Who has the egg on the face? But also this now brings in the conversation about scrutiny of different documents and conversations in Parliament, because you are the Parliament that passes the same money that is appropriated. You have the appropriation powers. Then later on, when it is passed, you still come back to say it was wrongfully done, yet you participated in its legality.
Okay, so here's the thing, that if Parliament wants to correct course, that's a good thing, because there was an outcry from the people, and Parliament is trying to correct
What
course.
if there was no outcry? Would we have seen this?
Of course
Maybe not.
Yeah, most likely not. But I would applaud anyone who tries to change their ways. So that's a good thing. Secondly, the issue he was talking about, it's not true that Senyonyi will get that money. That money was a one-off payment to Mpuga and those commissioners. It's not true that it's going to be available for everyone. Thirdly, on who has egg on their face, it's the grab mentality that we were talking about earlier with the issue of Chitezi. If you have access to money, grab what you can, and then you can leave the rest to go. That's what happened with this commission, with that ex gratia payment, that people are allowed to budget for themselves, the money, their emoluments. The people who are in charge of budgeting their emoluments budget an extra amount of money for themselves. There is no question about that. Yes, it's legal, but it's also immoral. Those two can exist alongside each other. Because you see, the problem with just focusing on the president is that then, because who is supposed to hold the president accountable? It's Parliament. Those are the representatives of the people. What are they doing? They are also grabbing. Every opportunity they get, they grab. Every opportunity they get, they grab. They don't even bother holding anyone accountable. And that cascades down at all levels of government, because the people who are supposed to hold accountable are not doing it. And for me, that's the issue. Doesn't matter what the judge said. Yes, it was legal, but was it moral? Especially for the leader of opposition, because the opposition we have now is so small. The people only vote for it to be the mirror of what could be. And what does the leader of opposition, what could be done? And what does the leader of opposition do? He joins in the eating, because
he was being thanked for service.
Yeah, but...
And the money is allocated in the budget. The entire House gets to discuss it. The entire House, it is input in a budget. It goes through the budget committee of Parliament.
Mildred.
It comes to the House, and the House passes it, only to realize later that they passed an immoral...
Mildred, who thanked the leader of opposition and those commissioners?
We, the taxpayers, because that money comes from me. And
no, yeah, but did you see like...
Passed by our representatives.
Yeah, but did you see like a motion, a proper motion saying we have to thank this guy and these guys, and therefore we have set aside a certain amount of money to thank them?
In essence, that's what the legality of that passing is,
okay,
Dictor.
so no, here's the thing, that it's true, these people didn't look at the budget, or they looked at it and feared...
Or they never do.
Yeah, mostly they never do. But also, you have to remember that that parliament, unfortunately, is a dictatorship of sorts. If you raise your voice, again, the grab mentality, because people are worried, if I raise my voice, I'll stop getting certain privileges. And therefore, if you have nothing to lose, you keep quiet. That's what has been happening in parliament.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dictor. I love Dictor has introduced a totally new diction, grab mentality in Parliament. But Josh, let me come to you. 189 members of Parliament have now signed or did sign against the censure motion of Honorable Seth Kubo against the commissioners following this act which was passed by them. I love when Dictor says, when Saul turns to Paul, we will still be able to praise the Lord in that regard. What do you make of the judgment?
First of all, this debate about this payout suffered a stillbirth. One, when it appeared to be targeting an individual in the names of the leader of opposition. And therefore closed us to a bigger debate about the whole issue of management of Parliament. Because, first of all, how did this issue come up? The issue came up after the sitting of the Parliamentary Commission, which decided that this is the way to go. So it was agreed. Therefore, when it came out like as if it is targeting Mpuga, and yet there were many members on that commission. And by the way, the Parliamentary Commission is chaired by the Speaker of Parliament. We also have to look at there is this issue which is bigger. I know that the former vice president was given money, was given, they are given even vehicles.
Because that's in law. It's act.
There is a law. But also, we know that when they were debating, because you have to look at the spirit. These lawyers who say that to interpret the law, you have to look at the spirit of the law. When they were debating the issue of leader of opposition, they equated the leader of opposition, I think either to vice president or something like that. If that was the level, it means that what people at his level are entitled to, he should therefore also get. That's my interpretation as a layperson. I think there is a problem. For me, I say that, first of all, it should not, we need to revise how the emoluments for members of parliament are derived. Because I don't believe that it is morally right for members of parliament to be deciding how they should be paid.
True.
But it is unfortunate that instead of us debating that bigger question, the debate reduced to Mpuga and whether he should go, whether he should be dropped.
No, so you're basically suggesting a salaries review board of a sort.
I think there should be something.
Okay. So here's the thing. It's fair that Mpuga was held to account the way he was. Because like I said, the opposition in parliament is supposed to be like the real, like what we have hope in. Because we have already agreed the government is the way it is. Everyone is trying to snatch what they can. But it's a problem, a very serious problem. When the people that we hope are going to then like say, wait, look at this again, also join in the stealing, in the grabbing from the people, that's one. But secondly, when the people who decided, the people who debated our constitution were doing so, they thought members of parliament would be representative of the people, and therefore would not look at just stealing from the people the way everyone else would, the one that where they would be holding them accountable, the way everyone else would be intending to steal. Unfortunately, we have learned with Uganda that representatives of the people are as eager as the people they are supposed to hold accountable when stealing from the people. So yes, we should discuss whether Parliament should still decide their salaries and emoluments.
I think we are not privy to the minutes of that meeting which sat, in which they decided. We even don't know whether Mpuga asked for it. But there's also this issue of collective responsibility. If you are in a meeting and other members decide that they should give you this payout, so is that wrong? We don't know what was discussed there. We don't know whether it was the initiative of the leader of opposition.
We did look at the minutes. Those minutes were shared on social media where that thing came from.
Did they say that Mpuga asked for it?
He didn't ask for it.
But they agreed. They sat and agreed and said, let's get some of we shall get some of this money, and they agreed to it.
There is this thing called the judgment call. Now, it was decided. You are saying that this Mpuga should have been morally upright and refused. In this case, he didn't. So how do you deal with it?
Parliament should have been moral enough to check.
Decided that is not illegal.
Yeah, but...
Are you going to judge him on issues of morality?
Yes, that's what the essential motion is about.
So who judges the morality? The same house that passed a budget that they didn't scrutinize enough?
Yes, because, like I said, they are the ones we have. So what are we supposed to do?
So we're dealing with a court of public opinion in this case, and not necessarily the courts of law.
Because essential motion...
So are you going to use priests?
Indeed a court
Are you going to use priests to say if it was moral or moral?
The priests
so we
in
cannot
Uganda,
be judged by the law.
No,
what
even
the law
priests
say?
in Uganda take what they can. So it's true that it's immoral.
The bigger question here is actually the lessons we do get to learn. Because as is, yes, it's legal, whether legal or immoral or not moral, whether Parliament scrutinizes or does not scrutinize, whether we should be able to pay persons who have done their service, because after all, they're paid a salary when they're doing whatever, or they're given what they need. What lessons do we pick as we get to wind this up? I'll start with you, Council. What lessons do we pick from this conversation entirely?
I think one thing that is obvious is law and justice do not always converge. It's possible to be legally right, but in terms of justice to be completely offside.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the Mpuga issue comes in. Legally, I think he can be defended. I think the question was, is it just? Do we see this as justice when Mpuga gets this money? And maybe the question might be no, given the fact that we are a poor country and we ought to be utilizing our resources better, and those in power need to show an example that we should be able to sacrifice for our country, and we should be able to work within a certain limit. I think for me that is the key thing. Now, should Mpuga be hounded and rounded up? My argument is no. Leave Mpuga alone. I think we have bigger fish to fry. We have bigger problems to worry about. Parliament and the public should be more spirited and more strategic in their approach to dealing with national issues. I think we've spent too long on the Mpuga issue. We really need to move on to bigger issues that are of strategic importance, like the future of the country. The future of the country it's not like hinging on the Mpuga issue. If Mpuga stays, Uganda is doomed. No. We need to look at what we need to invest our energies in. And I think on that front, we're maybe not making the right decisions. We need to think better and plan better. But at the same time, I also want to point out what Dictor was saying about the thinking at the time that the Constitution was made. People, you look at the people who were in the CA, the Constituent Assembly at the time in '94, the people who were in the 6th Parliament, the very first Parliament of the Constitution, I think it's a different breed from than what we have today. People thought at the time that MPs would always be reasonable, would always be have national interests at the forefront. They would always be able to control themselves in terms of their appetite for money. That was what people thought at the time. They even thought, you can't believe it, they thought that the president would be able to live after 2 terms of power. You know, it's amazing how they thought at the time. So the thinking at the time is radically different from the thinking at this present time. Now we know that people cannot control their appetites for money and for power, and they need to be checked. So it's just that the choices, the parliament, the constitution was made at a time that did not properly forecast what the thinking would be today.
In the future.
And that is where we're having a problem. But I hope that Ugandans can rethink and say, we can rebuild this country and ensure a better future for our children.
For the better. Joshua, lessons from this as we wind up.
Thank you very much. I think, yes, I'm happy that there's a national conversation about the issue of how we manage our garbage. Of course, I disagree with my brother. My brother advocates for a rupture in the system where heads should roll from the president to the others. There are many who believe that there is a lot of progress that has been made, but there are still challenges ahead. The issue is how to manage those challenges. Some people believe that the government in power can improve and even work better to manage these systems. What is important is that these have been recognized as challenges that can be dealt with.
And from Parliament,
also
the lessons?
the issue of corruption, which was talked about. I'm happy that there is focus on how to deal with the issue of corruption. Now, I think for Parliament the issue of pay, of course, there are voices coming from government about the need to fight corruption. And because there's a lot that pointed to the issue of corruption, investors coming, the president also recently talking about the need, I think, setting up a committee to fight corruption. There is a committee to protect, to defend investors from characters that are corrupt. But also, the issue of how remuneration for members of parliament is determined. I strongly believe that we should not leave it in the hands of members of parliament to determine, because like Ndogo Gawaya said, when the constitution was being made, the assumption was that members of parliament would be honorable enough to make rightful decisions for the good of the country. We are seeing it over time that this is not the case. Therefore, we should be debating on how this remuneration should be determined going forward.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, Dictor, what lessons are we taking from the saga in Parliament, the conversation around the service award?
Okay, so for me, I'm looking forward to that censure motion.
Okay.
Because it's, so you see...
you're an executioner.
No. I'm looking to it.
A guillotine merchant.
No, because you see, so we are stuck with the president we have. But surely some things can change. And
Instead of censuring the president, you're here censuring him.
Yes,
let us get serious.
Yes,
there is only one person who should be censured by Parliament,
So,
and we know who he is.
We have no censure
You're
motion
wasting
of the
time
president.
and energy and money.
We have one of
Right now, we have a censure motion in Parliament
for
commissioners.
Yeah.
I'd be happy if those people were censured because they were immoral. And luckily, the immorality can be judged with a censure motion.
Does that exonerate the leadership of Parliament when we're talking about censure?
It doesn't. But hopefully, if these guys are censured, others will not then enable the lead. Because part of the problem
Isn't that selective application?
No. Part of the problem we have at Parliament right now is that no one tries to hold the leadership of Parliament accountable. No one dares speak against the leadership of government, whether it's in opposition, whether it's in on the government side. Everyone has allowed whatever is happening in Parliament to happen. And as the voters, we have to wait 5 years. And that's if we are lucky, because many times they will be bought anyway and they will come back. So if some people can be held accountable, same as I said with KCCA, if you can hold some people accountable, let's hold those accountable, and hopefully it will generate some thinking around, do I really want to put my neck on the block for this person, whether it's a leader or whatever. It will generate some thinking. But if we allow impunity to reign everywhere, then that's a problem. So yeah, we have some corners where impunity will most likely reign for a while, but let's have those we can clean. Let's have them cleaned. I
A
don't
journey
see
of
anything
1,000
wrong with-
miles starts with
Yeah.
one step. All right. Well, our time is fast spent, but we can continue with the discussion online. Thank you very much, Dr. Simwe. Council Gawaya, thank you so much for always making time for us, and Joshua Charimpa, thank you so much, and to you, our viewer, for sparing time to be with us. That's all we had time for. I am Mildred Tohai. Say good morning and God bless you.